My topic is leading beyond imposed expectations. And part one of that topic is expect the unexpected. So when Chao and I were talking about the conference and we were like, tell your story. How do you even begin to tell your story in half an hour or one session or even a day? So I had to think about, where I wanted to come from, especially when you have different layers and phases of stories like each and every one of us in here. But today, I'm just going to briefly talk a little bit about my story from an imposed expectation standpoint. And our objectives are going to be to define the important terms like expectations and imposed, begin to tell my story, and I say begin because that's all I'm going to be able to do today is begin to tell you a little bit about myself. Discuss some facts about expectations, briefly discuss 3 effects of imposed expectations, and then I'm going to leave you hanging till part 2 tomorrow. So I found a very good quote that meant a lot to this particular presentation. So entrapped are we in our self-expectations and self-imposed limitations that we fail to see that we have always had the keys to our own prisons. We're just scared senseless to use them. Now, I put senseless. It had a different word. And I'm going to read that again. So entrapped are we in our self-expectations and self-imposed limitations that we fail to see what we have always had the keys to our own prisons. We're just scared senseless to use them. And, when I think about different areas of my life and as far as expectations are concerned, whether I liked it or not, I was already given a label, being Miles Monroe's daughter, as a PK, a preacher's kid. And so the expectations were endless. They were over and abundant. Some were verbalized, some were not. Some were imposed by my parents, some were imposed by myself. Nonetheless, they were there. And so very quickly, I learned that, okay, so if I'm not careful, I'm going to be imprisoned by everyone else's expectations. And if I'm not careful, even my own expectations of myself. So when we look at the definition of expectation, there are a few definitions out there. Merriam-Webster defines it as a state of looking forward to or waiting for something. The Cambridge Dictionary defines it as the feeling of expecting something to happen. And other sources call it a strong belief that something will happen to be the case in the future, assumptions. As I was even reading and looking up and researching expectations, some call it prophecies that people have, whether they speak it over your life or they have an assumption of themselves, of you in their mind. And they expect you to live up to them, or they expect you to live by them. And some have the audacity to verbalize those expectations, verbalize those assumptions of you. And so, Chao and I, growing up as kids in preschool and elementary school, we were always expected to do good in school. We were expected to get good grades. And that started from within the home. It wasn't just from my friends, from our teachers, our parents. They put great and high expectations on us to do well in school, and there were incentives, which caused us to put in expectations of ourselves, impose those same expectations on ourselves. So he and I strive to be first, second, third, fourth, fifth in the class every year. If we got C's and D's or any B's, it upset us because that there were these expectations that we were trying to meet. But sometimes when expectations are imposed, that's a totally different ballgame. Because when we look at how they define impose, it means to affect someone by using your authority, to establish or create in a forceful way or manner, to force someone to accept your belief. So imagine you being under someone's thumb and they're pressing on you and they're telling you, this is what you're going to be because this is what I see you as a PK, or this is what you're going to do, or this is what you're supposed to say. This is how you're supposed to act. And they're imposing their thoughts of you on you because of what? Because of your name, because of your position, and mind you, your name ain't really so much, my name wasn't really so much my name until I grew up. But that was the name that I was given. I didn't ask for Munroe. I didn't ask to be Miles Munroe's daughter. That's just the way God, my source, made it. But again, carrying that name and being in the position that he was in, being his child, carried so much expectations and so much responsibility. You know, they also define imposition as to force someone to have the same opinion, belief as you, to give someone something unpleasant to deal with, force something unwelcome or unfamiliar to be accepted or put in place, to take advantage of someone by demanding their attention or commitment. So imagine committing to everybody else's expectation. Everybody else's expectation of you. You should not wear this. You know, I remember growing up in the church, and a lot of the older women, I could call names right now, I can see them in my face. The older women, you know, I don't know, maybe 12, 13, 14, and I want to follow my mom, so I put a little lipstick on my mouth, a little eyeshadow, I'm fooling in her makeup. Why you wearing makeup? Why you wearing lipstick? And so I had to figure out how I was going to deal with that, even at the age of 13, at the age of 15, at the age of 16. You know, why you wearing high heels? Okay, hold up. Why are you? So I had to figure out very early on how I was going to maintain my respect for these old folks, maintain my dignity, but still not be pressured and pulled in by their expectation of me because of who knows what. And sometimes people's expectations come from so many different places. It can come from their insecurity. It could come from their jealousy. It can come from them wishing they could do what I do now at this age, and they can't anymore. So I'm very careful. So earlier on, I learned how to manage and how to control others' expectations of me, and then also the expectations I place on myself. So some facts about expectations. We are all consumers of expectations. And expectations can be both externally imposed or internally imposed. And like I said, my external expectations started from my parents, from the household. You know, as my dad, being a preacher, he expected his children to act a certain way. He really did. And sometimes he didn't have to verbalize that. We just knew. Family, friends especially, the peer pressure. You know, they expect you to, or you a PK. Sometimes there are people who actually expect you to do worse as a PK. They don't actually expect you to do dress a certain way, act a certain way positively, but because you're a PK has this negative connotation. They actually expect you to be one wilding out there doing what you're not supposed to be doing. And so again, I had to figure out how am I going to balance both and still be me. Because what you don't do is I didn't want to lose myself. I didn't want to lose the person I was becoming trying to please everybody else, even my parents. And so then again, I started to now build and impose expectations of myself. And, that's hard because that's almost like setting a bar for yourself and not wanting to fail. That's, setting expectations. And sometimes those expectations are set based on others. So my parent, when I was younger, for some odd reason, I was a female into hair and makeup, so I wanted to do cosmetology. And I told that to my dad, and he just thought, to be very honest, he thought it was just, are you crazy? My daughter being in a hair salon doing hair? It was just totally against his religion when it comes to that. And so that's what I wanted to do, but Dad was like, I want you to do something a little more, constructive. And I guess he didn't think cosmetology was constructive at that point. So I chose something that I loved medicine, I loved health, but I chose pre-med because it was prestigious for anyone to be a doctor, to be a lawyer, to be any type of, engineer. And so I say, okay, eeny, meeny, miny, mo, and I landed on doctor because it was the one that attracted me the most. So I started pre-med in undergrad. I did 2 years of pre-med, got exposed to other classes and other resources and realized that, okay, so I didn't really want to do surgical medicine, but I wanted to do the social aspect. And so halfway through undergrad, I changed my degree from pre-med to social work. And I still remained in the medicine, in the medical field. And my dad, he was pleased with that. And to get his blessing, to get to get that he was pleased, it was important to me. But even if he had said no, at that point in my life, I was gonna have to say, Dad, I love you, but too bad. I gotta do this for me. But it just worked out to where he was, he was fine with that. And it just goes to show, though, that, from a certain point in my life where it really, really mattered what people's expectations were of me and pleasing them, and how I was saying, okay, let me go ahead and do doctor. You want me to be big and high and mighty, let me do that. I mean, it really wasn't what I wanted to do. So eventually I said, I don't want to do this. I don't want to be this type of doctor, this type of medical field worker. So what is it that really interests me? What was my passion? And social work was. So I made that change. Depending on the individual, the external and the internal imposed expectations are going to carry a different weight. By that I mean, for some, the expectations of others are going to really determine who they are, and what they do, and what they become, more than if it was a self-imposed expectation. For me, I had to learn to manage both, because they're both there, and to this present day, they are still there. You guys have no idea how nervous I am talking, because I know you all already have expectations of what it is you expect me to say, how you expect me to look, what you expect me to do. And now I gotta figure out, okay, so am I gonna meet all those expectations, or am I just gonna be me and do me? And so that becomes most important at number one. And expectations can present both negative and positive effects. I don't think we give expectations enough credit. But whether we like it or not, they really do mold and tend to shape how we act and some of the decisions that we make throughout the day and just throughout our lives. And so for me, it was just knowing that, being aware, and managing that. So earlier on, I learned that I can either allow expectations to make me or break me. I can allow expectations to build me up or tear me down. And I can allow expectations to irritate me so much that I do better or I give up. And I say this, irritate, because really and truly, it really is annoying when, people saying things, okay, so everything just happened recently, 2014. Parents died, and to be very honest with you, I did not know that I would have been able to handle that the way that I did. I actually expected me to just break and fall apart. But I exceeded my own expectations, number one. Number two, everybody else, to this very day, still expect my brother and I to be walking around like zombies. Kind of under a rock, looking disheveled. You lost your parents, you were very close. It's like, how are you so strong? And so, it's kind of irritating and annoying because they had the guts to say that. Some say it to me. We really didn't expect you guys to be doing what you're doing. And so even that is a motivator. It motivates me to exceed their expectations and then just kick it in the butt from the get-go. And why have such expectation? Why just, and it's so hard to say don't expect anything, but sometimes not expecting to me is just so much better, because then you're just surprised. And so when I say irritating and annoying, it's sometimes expectations can be very annoying, but you can use that to make you better or just give up. So I'm a gym rat. I know sometimes I don't look it, because I may have fell off. Hey, but nonetheless, I promise you, I'm in the gym all the time. See, you already have expectations of what I should look like if I say I'm a gym rat. So I had to beat that, and I had to manage that. I had to say, it doesn't really matter what you think I should look like. Nonetheless, I'm in the gym for all kinds of reasons. And so, but in the gym, I learned certain things when it comes to lifting weights and working out daily and the need to take a break. And when you look at the gym world to the real world, anything that's weighty tears you down, but it builds you up. One thing I learned in school, doing sports and my coaches, when you lift weights, and some of you may not know, but when you lift weights, it actually tears your muscle. And then the next process is the repairing. That repairing process is what actually allows it to grow. and become stronger. So that tearing and repairing is actually important and vital for building muscle. Anything heavy breaks down, then repair. That's why, and I say this because it makes no sense me lifting weights if that's a 15-pound dumbbell. So a 15-pound dumbbell with me at this stage is very light. So eventually my muscle has already built to that particular weight. If the weight isn't heavy enough, it's not gonna tear. That muscle isn't gonna tear, therefore it's not gonna repair. Anything annoying causes you to either get rid of it or do something about it. So for me, one of my, not insecurities, but one of my annoyances is extra body fat. So again, I'm in the gym. Why? I'm doing something about it. So, and it annoys me, the extra arm, the extra love handle. So I figure out, you know what, let me do something about it to get rid of it. Anything that's a burden makes you aware, disciplined, and responsible. Going to the gym on a daily basis is burdening, but I find it exciting because there is an end that I can see, and I kind of know I know what's going to happen. And that extra weight that's maybe too heavy on any given day, or that burden, or the annoyance of that pain that I feel after lifting 200 pounds on legs the day before, that's a pleasure pain. Because yes, I'm hurt, I'm feeling it now, but in a couple of months, I'm gonna look sexy. So when we talk about, I want to talk about 3 effects of imposed expectations. Expectations can convey pressure. And I want to go back to this slide when we talk about pressure because, you know, pressure is anything you could think about that's heavy, anything that's weighty, anything that's hot, too hot, extreme cold. And expectations can actually cause pressure. And when you think about pressure, you automatically think of something negative. But actually, just like burdens, just like weight, just like anything heavy, you apply pressure to anything and you're gonna get a result that you probably did not expect. So you apply pressure to a rock and you're bound to get a diamond. You apply pressure and heat the right amount of times to metal and you're bound to get a sword that can be used for battle. So, you know, when I talked about their negative and positive effects of expectations, this is one of the things I'm talking about. So as much as I am to manage the expectations of others especially, I use those as stepping stools for me to get from one level to the next because I have to beat expectations, especially if they're expectations that are used to pull me down. Now, if they're expectations that are in right line with where I'm going, then that's good, we can walk together. But for those that are not, you know, I'm not gonna fight against them, but I know they're there. So when you think about, you know, expectations having pressure, that pressure doesn't have to always be bad. I actually, as I've gotten a lot older, I've used the pressure of expectations to make me stronger, take me from one level to the next, and to show myself first and everyone else that your expectations don't mean more than my purpose and my vision for my life. Another quote by Johann Wolfgang, "If I accept you as you are, it will make you worse. However, if I treat you as though you are what you are capable of becoming, I help you become that." And so again, if I accept you as you are, it'll make you worse. However, if I treat you as though you are what you are capable of being, I help you become that. Selah. I mean, that says enough in itself. You know, people, again, they have these expectations of you, and some of them are good. My parents knew that I was so much more capable of doing and being what I was right now at that particular point. So they knew that in order for me to have 2 masters today, they had to start from when I was 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 years old, pushing me and expecting me to get certain grades in school from that. Because had I continued to fail, or had I started failing from the get-go, I would have never made it to a master's in social work and a master's in business. And so, if I was to make this quote so much differently, it's like a potential purpose quote that my dad would have made. If I treat you as though you are capable of becoming, I help you become that. And so I use people's expectations as the positive ones especially, as them really expecting me to do well and to do great, and for me to meet that and beat that. Another effect of imposed expectations are they can cause you to miss focus. Now, this is one of the negative effects of expectations, and it's only because, again, for me, expectations, whether they were internally or externally imposed, the most important thing was me managing them. And I had to know what was for me and what wasn't, what was good, what was bad, what was gonna kill me, what was gonna make me stronger, because I would run myself ragged trying to meet everyone's expectations, that I would forget really and truly where I'm supposed to be going and the journey that I was on. And so, focusing and trying to please everyone can actually misguide you. You're so busy trying to meet the expectations imposed by yourself and others that when you realize you are off course, it's too late. When expectations imposed by others are unrealistic, they can be misleading and cause you to be misfocused. So that's why for me, and I say management because unfortunately you cannot, we cannot eradicate people's perceptions and expectations of us. However, we can know that they're there and we can manage them, which is the key. So I've been learning to manage expectations from we were younger to now. And the expectations as I get older are they're getting more intense. And that may just be because I'm maturing and I'm getting older. And so managing them is important. And I mentioned this earlier. Purpose and vision supersedes expectations. It keeps you focused and disciplined. So for me, before I concern myself with my own self-imposed expectations and the expectations of others, I always go back to the drawing board. What's the purpose for me doing what I'm doing and going where I'm going? And what is my vision? And the third effect of imposed expectations is expectations can cause fear. Now, this can be looked at both negative and positive. But when we talk about fear, you're afraid of failing. And that means you're afraid of not meeting someone else's expectation. I had a great fear of my parents. I knew they expected me to act a certain way. I knew they expected me to get certain grades in school. I knew they had these expectations. And God knows the last thing I wanted to do was bring shame to them or shame to their name. So I tried my endeavor best to not do that by either two things: not doing wrong, or if I did wrong, don't get caught, in all honesty. But, you become afraid of failing. You become afraid of not meeting expectations and the expectations of others, but there's nothing worse than failing to yourself. And so I had to make sure that I manage my own expectations of myself. Don't set them too high too soon. Still set them high, but know when I'm really ready to try and reach that. Because if I fail, I don't want that failure to be a setback. So, now I'm at a point where mom and dad aren't here. So they know my rocks aren't here, my foundation isn't there, my backbone isn't there. So you could imagine the fear I have of failing them even in their death. And so my brother and I are always talking, and we're always talking and communicating about the fact that, we just don't want to fail them. We don't want to fail, period. And we don't want to fail them. So imagine us managing that expectation that you guys don't even have. And to wrap it up, we live our lives trying to fulfill expectations, both those imposed by others and those imposed by ourselves. Sometimes these expectations can be daunting, but ignoring them won't make them go away. So again, managing your expectations of others, managing expectations from others and of yourself is the more important key than trying to get rid of them. And use them to your benefit. I actually use expectations to my benefit. I've just learned to deal with them head on and rise to the challenge. So my final point, and when I talk about, we must learn to deal with expectations head on and rise to the challenge. My challenge was, and still is I was given something I didn't ask for. And that's my name and a title. The name Munroe, the title PK, Miles Munroe daughter, that carries weight. I didn't ask for that weight. That was one weight I didn't go to the gym and pick up. I said, I'm gonna use this. But that's my challenge. My other challenge is I was given something I didn't necessarily want. And that was the baton that I had to accept and receive November 10th, 2014. And then I had to accept the unexpected. And that was the sudden death of my parents. So now, I just expect the unexpected. And there's one quote that I'm sure many of you have heard from a very, very important book. Everyone to whom much was given, of him much will be required. And from him to whom then entrusted much, they will demand the more. Thank you.